right, traders, this is Blake Morrow. I want to welcome you to the Morning Edge webinar, and I'm very, very happy to bring in Steve Vulgi in Athens, and he's fortunately joining us to give us and maybe shed some light on what's happening in Athens. I'm going to unmute his mic right now, and let's see if I can grab him. Steve, good morning.
Hey Blake, can you hear me?
Hey Steve, how are you?
As good as it can be, given the circumstances.
I was going to say, given the circumstances, I should have thrown that in there. I speak to you just like I'm going to speak to somebody here in the United States. Like, hey, how's it going? How's the baseball game? But I know things are very stressful there in Athens, and I know you in particular have been taking it pretty hard. So can you give us and by the way, I feel for you, and I thank you so much for joining us today. I know it's very, very stressful there. I know you're very busy, and thank you for taking the time out today to joining us on the Morning Edge. Well, could you give us an update on what is happening with this referendum? There's a lot of headlines flying around today. So
sure, but since we have to keep it short in the sense that we only have 30 minutes, first of all, do you want an answer on the social part, on the economy part, or on the political part?
A little bit of both probably wouldn't be bad. So, but let's start with the economy. So,
okay, the economy. If you remember, when was it exactly? Not the previous time you had called me to say a few words. It was
maybe about a month and a half ago when we talked about imposing the drachma.
Yeah, that I told you that we already had some phenomenon like part suspension of payments towards the private sector and a slow-moving bank run. As you understand, both of those are now in full extent, which means there is a complete suspension of payments, both from the state to the private sector, but now since the banks are closed with capital controls from the private sector to the private sector as well, which actually means that a situation has started that it's because history of economics explains some things very clearly, and that's how I knew what was going to happen, and that's how I know what's going to happen if there is no solution on the table within a few days. Is that the next part is that everything crumbles and falls apart because, as you very well know, banks provide the liquidity. Liquidity is the oil that runs the engine of the economy. So if you remove the oil from the engine should stall within, seconds. In an economy, it's not seconds, but it will be days. Best case scenario, a couple of weeks.
That's a great analogy to use. Now, you probably have some family members or friends that either receive pensions or work for the state or work for the work for the government. Are they receiving paychecks still?
This month they actually did, but it doesn't matter anymore because you can't withdraw money from the bank. There is a limit of 60 euros per day imposed since Monday morning.
Right.
Due to the referendum, of course, because Tsipras' government, after destroying the country within 5 months, had the brilliant idea of putting a referendum, which, the referendum is the most democratic mean of deciding something. It is actually the pure form of democracy as it was invented in the ancient Greece. But there is a small problem with this one, is that they had 5 months of supposedly negotiating to do that, and they decided to do it after the expiration of the program, stopping negotiating, leaving actually their negotiating team on Brussels negotiating, and finding out that they called for a referendum. I mean, not even their negotiating team didn't know about it. Just to give you an idea how that worked. What actually happened is very, very obvious.
No. I was gonna say you're now touching on the political part. So let's talk about that. And can you explain explain to us, let's just say us that are not so familiar with the Greek system, what's happening with the referendum? What does a yes and a no vote mean? I know you've been to both rallies. I know you can see both sides, and maybe you can tell us what you think would be the best for the Greek people to vote and the best direction for the Greek people to go. All right, so I'll leave it at that.
First of all, this referendum is a sham, and the reason is the obvious. The referendum is about answering yes or no to a question that at this point is completely meaningless. The referendum is about answering yes or no of if the Greek citizen agrees to a proposal that was on the table last Wednesday, and since then it had been already twice revamped, yeah. And,
retracted, yeah.
Yeah, changed actually, changed
okay.
To the better actually, before they decided to quit the negotiations altogether. So actually, we are required to answer if we agree with the proposal that was not on the table when they announced the referendum. It has no signature on it because it was a working paper, and it certainly is not on the table anymore because that was a proposal to postpone the second memorandum of understanding with the Troika and get some funding to finish off the second memorandum of the Troika, which has officially expired since 15 and a half hours ago, and legally you cannot go back to it. So they're asking for an answer to something that doesn't exist.
So what do you what is then the goal of the Syriza government at this point? Is it to say, all right, we vote to stay to basically accept something that doesn't exist, but it tells the creditors, Greece, the people speak, and we are willing to negotiate with the creditors, or no, we choose not to be in the euro anymore, and we're going to go about it ourselves. And now I've got the vote of the people behind me.
Okay. That's the fun part. They say to the people, first of all, the vast majority of Greeks always supported our membership to the Eurozone. That's undoubted. I mean, there has been hundreds and hundreds of polls since we entered the Eurozone, and there isn't a single one that the support for the euro is less than 65%, ever. I mean, usually it's around 75%. When people are more angry, it's like around 70%, 68 or something. But it has never been below that. So the fun part is the following. Everybody understands that, and watching what else they have done, that they had been claiming that they're close to a deal for months and months, that they left the negotiating table at the last moment when a deal was extremely close because Tsipras himself had made a proposal which was like not even 5% away in economic terms from what the creditors were asking for. So you understand that when your differences are below 5%, there is no way you won't find a solution if both sides really want to. Everybody believes, everybody that has some sense believes that the no vote, no to the proposal that isn't on the table anymore anyhow, but is going to be used in the near future from the government to actually take us from the Eurozone, because people that understand what's happening have started suspecting that since it's very hard for somebody to be so incompetent, the alternative is that there was always a specific targeting behind all those moves. There was a specific plan that was always left untold. We know as a fact that 40% of what constitutes the base of Syriza members, when I say members, I don't mean voters, I mean the members that constitute the core of the party, were pro-drachma. And as it seems, the whole plan was get a likable guy, a young, likable guy that appears and speaks like a centrist, in the spectrum between right and left, and put him as a front man, get him to um, uh, actually um, persuade the people that obviously have suffered and have seen their lifestyle decrease by a lot due to the 5 years of austerity, and then push their agenda, under the table. And, most people have already started suspecting that this is what's happening. So what has now happened is that all the other parties, besides them and the other party that constitutes the government, because they govern with another party called an L, which is also funny because they are left-leaning and the other one is towards the end of the spectrum on the right side, which is conflicting. I mean, usually those things don't match up together. They all try to make people understand that there is a big chance that no means no to the euro, no to the eurozone. Also, all our European partners have come out and said, listen, for us, if you vote no, that means no to the European Union. But
Right.
the government tries to persuade people for the following, which is insane, that if you vote no, you give us more negotiating power to get a better deal to stay in the Eurozone. As you understand, it's more than hard to believe them.
So if like let's just say the people swing the other way towards the government and votes no, is it the government, the Syriza, meaning Syriza current leadership in the Greek government, is it their intention then just to walk Greece off the cliff, if you will, and say we're now I'm going to lead you through this awful time that we're going to face? I mean, what are they expecting to get out of it? I mean,
my personal opinion is since they will want to appear consistent, they will take, let's say, a no vote and go to our partners and propose something insane. I don't know what, but something that they will know in advance that they won't be able to accept. You know what I mean? And when they say, no, this isn't happening, they'll come back and say, listen, we tried, but, keeping our dignity and everything else and all the ethical BS behind the whole idea, I'm not implying that having an ethical basis is BS. I'm implying that they're using it as a BS excuse. You know what I mean? It's a different thing.
No, but if that, and that obviously, let's just say it's some outrageous demands. The European creditors say that's just unreasonable. It's not going to happen. Mm-hmm. Then what? And what do they expect to happen after that? I mean, is Tsipras want to, because he's young, maybe inexperienced, maybe was he want to show the world and all of Greece that he can lead Greece off the cliff, but it's going to be okay, and he'll make a legacy for himself? What's his intent? I don't understand.
There are two possible options. Either he's a foolish idealist, which some people with a very concrete and solid plan are using to do whatever they want to do, or he's part of that plan. There is no other alternative, because what I'm describing to you is actually a coup. A coup using all the possible democratic means. Because when you know that on average like 70 to 75% of the people want to stay in the Eurozone, and indirectly you're trying to lead them doing everything you possibly can outside it. I mean, for example, there was a minister of the government after 3 days of capital controls that said, you see, it's not really hard to get used to capital controls. I mean, who the hell would... I mean, I don't know. Just judge it from yourself. What else can I say? That the ballot paper they have printed out, we're talking about one of the most democratic countries that exist. I mean, in Greece, for example, freedom of speech, even to the more far-fetched extent, was never in doubt. And we're talking about a government that is trying now to describe people that disagree with it as being people that are against our society, which is a usual fascist tactic. We're talking about people that printed a ballot paper that already has been judged by the European Commission and all the all the different lawyer associations of Greece as unconstitutional and illegal. Can I share my screen to show you?
Yes. Here, let me go ahead and do that for you, Steve. Just give me a second. I have to make the adjustments. Well, you got something to show us, which is even greater. That's exciting. And we do have a couple of questions. So
Sure. And then we can go back to the economic part to explain something that can be.
oh, sorry, Steve. Steve, I
I can
missed.
explain to people because that's.
I'm sorry, we
Yeah,
missed the last 5 seconds of what you said because when I switch you over to a panelist so you can show your screen, it kills the audio. So what did you say the last sentence?
yeah, before I say that again, please tell me now, how do I share my screen?
Oh, here,
Because I
I'm going to
see
do
how to
this
share my
right.
webcam.
It's coming over right now. All right, and
Okay, yeah. So you can see my screen, right?
I can see, I'll tell you when I can see it. Yes, I can see the Greek document.
Okay,
Yes.
this is the ballot paper, okay?
Okay. And I can tell you 95% of the people viewing this right now can't read it.
Doesn't matter. First of all,
Okay.
no is ahead of yes, which makes no sense. You either put them next to each other, and if you want to put one on top of the other, it's always yes. I mean, even in plain speaking, it's like, is it yes or no? You know what I mean?
Right.
First of all.
And Nye is yes.
Second
Right.
of all, tell me something. Let's say that you are an old lady that has nothing to do with economics, okay?
Right.
You have a whole government propaganda explaining to you that the patriotic thing to do is vote no. Okay, but you want to decide for yourself, and you go to the ballot and you read. Do you think that this plan of deal that the European Commission, blah, 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 have put aside, which you can see below the middle, which is constituted by the two documents. The first document is titled, and then it's in English, Reforms for the Completion of the Current Program and Beyond.
Of course, you're an old Greek yaya. You're not going to be able to read that.
Yeah, and then there is a translation in Greek which almost makes no sense. And then it says, and the second, preliminary debt sustainability analysis. And those two documents that are many, many pages long, I can read them and understand them because I've studied finance and I've studied business administration, and in my free time I'm reading microeconomics. But what is the percentage of people that can?
Right.
So first unconstitutional stuff. This is a vague first unconstitutional part. This is a question about something that doesn't exist. Second, no is above yes. Third, the plain average citizen cannot understand what they're voting for. Fourth, in the Constitution, for obvious reasons which I will understand and everybody will, which I will explain and everybody will understand, says the following: you cannot make a referendum for fiscal issues. Why is that? If I go to my citizens and ask them, for example, do you want more money? Let's say, do you want a tax relief? Is there any chance they won't vote for yes? No, there isn't. If I go to them and ask them, do you want me to put more taxes to you? Is there any chance that they won't vote for no? No, there isn't. That's why the Constitution does not permit, bans the option of making a referendum about fiscal issues. This is not directly a fiscal issue, but it is a deal that brings fiscal changes to the economy. So according to not the letter of the law, but the substance of the law, this is also illegal, because for people to answer what they really want, they need to go against their instinct of saying no to more taxes. And there is nowhere that it explains what the alternative is. Let's go now back to the economics. We have two alternatives. Alternative A, you agree to more taxes, to more state reforms, so you can actually become a more productive economy and keep on the painful reform process we've started 5 years ago. So at some point in the future, in 5, 7, 3, 10 years, to be, fully competitive and, in the same, let's say, in the same level with an equivalent country of the Eurozone equivalent in size. I mean, okay, you will have to lose more of your buying power, obviously, as a consumer. You will have to work even more, which anyhow, Greeks, for whoever doesn't know, is the second most working, according to global statistics. That's not something a Greek says. We're working the second highest hours per year, I think, on the globe.
Can I stop you there for a second, Steve? Because you know everybody has this everybody has this notion that Greece, you know, no one works and they're lazy, and you know, from my experience, all I know is my wife's relatives that had they literally work 14, 15 hours a day. I mean, I'm not exaggerating. I'm not, and even when we were there visiting, we had to go to their work to visit them, to see them, because they just didn't have any time.
Very true, very true. And
So,
that
I
happens to
mean,
almost everybody that's in the private sector. Public sector
okay,
is
and they are in
a
the private
different thing.
sector.
Yeah, the
Okay.
public sector has always been more relaxed, completely unproductive, and actually consuming the vast majority of, the public spending, and
Now
that was always the problem.
that's a completely different topic that I wish we had another 2 hours to talk about, but we don't.
Oh,
So,
yes, yes,
okay.
yes.
So what you're showing me here, and I'm sorry to interrupt, but what you're basically showing me here is something that, in my view, now this is just from an outsider looking in, seems very illegal. And so my question would be, at what point does the Syriza government that currently is in charge, at what point do they come under scrutiny within the courts of law? You know, and I don't know if that's even possible, but to me it seems very, very manipulative what they're doing. So
It is definitely. It definitely is. They're manipulating, the public opinion, and instead of doing what any government should do, objectively inform people, they keep locking themselves in political choices that even when they work completely against them, instead of capitulating and accepting their mistake, they just keep trying to support them because they don't want to concede that they did mistakes. And to be honest, they've almost done only mistakes since they took over. It's not by accident that an economy that was actually, the gold winner of speed of reforms has been devastated within a period of 5 months. I mean, 5 months ago, we had gone back to growth. We had already had a few months of employment dropping after a long period of employment increasing up to 27.5%. And now everything has been reversed. And as you understand, the game changer is the capital controls that were imposed
yeah,
3 days ago, because
sure.
that literally guarantees a huge, huge problem to the economy. Let's begin by tourism. All states have started issuing, recommendations to the citizens that, listen, if you want to go to Greece, make sure you have a lot of cash with you, etc., etc. As you understand, if you're a tourist, you're going to say like, okay, let's go to Greece next year if things are okay. I can go,
Right.
let's say, to Turkey this year. You know what I
Right.
mean?
Yeah, sure.
So
I'll go somewhere else. I love Greece, but I'll visit somewhere else until things settle down.
that's the first part. Second part, how are they going to pay pensions next month and salaries? Do you think there is even a single person that will pay taxes or electricity bill or phone bill or anything else with whatever euros they have at the side until the capital controls are lifted? No
Yeah,
chance.
it's gonna freeze. I mean,
They're not going to collect a single euro. And when I say a single euro, I mean, you see public services, tax services, that are always full of people that collect, uh, you know, specific services that collect money from the taxpayer, or, for example, the electricity company billing department, and there isn't a single person in them. It's like, you know, desert.
crazy. Hey,
So,
Steve.
Yeah,
We're running limited on time. Just
yeah,
can
yeah.
I ask you a couple quick questions?
Sure, sure, sure.
Johan, who is in Sweden or Switzerland, I always mix the two where he's from up, said after the referendum, isn't there still a lot of medium term uncertainty? No vote might inflate Cyprus, and yes vote the opposite, but isn't the scope of creditor flexibility still limited, or might I be reading it wrong? Thanks, and that was to you.
Uh, of course, when you're, and this is an advice to anybody, I mean, it's pure negotiating 101. When you are in a weak position, you are the person or the party in this specific case that has to make the most concessions. Uh, what the Syriza government has managed to do is put us in a way worse negotiating position from where we began. We're now negotiating from a position that we are a state about to completely financially collapse within a couple of weeks. So, guess what the answer is? There is no dignity or whatever else ethical somebody wishes to try to impose to this negotiation anymore. It's just the instinct of survivability. You take what they give you, whatever that means, because the alternative is post-apocalypse situation.
Right. And that goes in the next question from Thomas is, why does he say the Greek government was destroyed by the current administration in 5 months when things were not going well with Greece well before that? Um, which is a good that's a good question. Um, with I mean, you know, how many governments have you had in the last 10 years, Steve?
A
I mean,
lot, a lot,
yeah.
because the average Greek person has been taught and perhaps has the instinct of, you know, trying to see how they can have a better year this year and not trying to plan what's the best course so we can have a better life after that. You remember the example I gave you the previous time with the pension reform issue and Sprouse report, right?
Right.
This is a very good example of how this thing works. So people are seeing their life get worse. They don't want to tolerate it. Some of them are indeed in a very, very rough spot, very rough spot. I mean, it's not pure mathematics. I'm speaking from the position of a person that doesn't have basic problems, but there are a lot of people that do. And they were always thinking that by voting somebody that has the unethical stance of promising things they cannot deliver, like Syriza did, that perhaps they have the magic, potion of, giving like a whole new, different way for the economy to rebound in zero time, which, as we very well know, after a financial destruction, devastation, the process to recovery is always slow. And we had already started getting on this slow recovery process. And this has, even if everything changes starting tomorrow, this has gone back at least a year within 5 months and probably around 2 years.
Wow.
So trying to aim again for a temporary gain is means actually a 2 year setback and a lot more pain on the way.
Okay, so with all that being said, and we have very limited time, and again, I want to thank you so much for being here, Steve. What do you think is going to happen here over the next couple of days, and what's the trade? I mean, you know, you have a lot of people that are long equities that are just now tuning in. There is going to be a very crucial weekend, obviously. How do you see this playing out in the market? And I'm going to be taking back over control of the screen here in a second.
Yeah,
So.
go ahead. All bets are off. All bets are off for the following reason. When, as an economist or as a human being with some mathematical way of thinking, to make assumptions, I need some, standards. You need predictability. You need a rational behavior. And we're talking about people that have been doing everything but taking rational choices. At the same time, today we're expecting Tsipras to speak. He has already sent a proposal that he's accepting the previous proposals of the Troika with some very little changes. Those proposals are not on the table anymore. And we are still on our way to a referendum to reject those proposals he's trying to get back on the table today. So if you think I can make any logical predictions about those people, I would have to be a god or something. I don't know. To have an ability to see into the future, there's no alternative. Okay, that's why I'm so desperate, as you understand, because when there is no rationality, right, you can comfort yourself somehow.
Sure. Now, now one last question from me, and Steve Bealby should be here. Steve, are you here? Just want to make sure he's.
Yes, I am.
Okay. Hey, Steve. Did you have any questions for Steve Vulgi? I don't want to take away from the equity traders' time. But we have obviously Greece does matter, and we have Steve V from Athens, who's obviously very close to the situation. Any questions for him?
No, not personally. So I'll let you finish up. Go ahead.
Okay. So Steve, let's talk about really quick, and then I'm going to let you go. And again, I want to really appreciate you being here.
Always my pleasure.
If the Greek people vote yes, does that put the equity markets globally at ease?
Probably yes. Probably yes.
Okay.
But keep that in mind for people, to know how to react when they see a yes vote, which I believe they will, because there is every kind of public union has already supported yes. A lot of angry people still, and I think the no was ahead when we started, but for every day that passes and people are suffering, a lot of people shift to the yes. So I give, although the question is set in such a way to trap people into answering no, although it's unconstitutional and everything else, I still believe that the probabilities are that we're going to see a yes vote. But we don't know what Tsipras will do then. He has implied that he will resign. And if that happens, there is no telling how fast we're going to be able to form a government. Probably we're going to try to form a temporary government to handle the situation that will constitute itself from many different parties. So it's like a unified Greek government, so there is also a lot of acceptance. And take a deal and then go to elections. But, that's an assumption.
Okay, and if it's a no vote, what happens?
If it's a no vote, the problem is that they trap themselves so much trying to explain to people that no, for us, answering no is only giving us the negotiating power to go back and ask for a better deal. It's not that they can still quit the Eurozone as easily as that, because they have now been promising people all the time, no, we want to stay in the Eurozone, we want to stay in the Eurozone. So there is still a chance, even if there is a no vote, that if they don't actually show true will to take a deal, that there are going to be political changes and they can still lose the government in the process. But that's not going to be as fast as a yes vote, you know what I mean?
Right.
So a no vote does not guarantee that Greece is out, but it definitely complicates the situation.
And the global equity markets would obviously probably disrupt a little bit because of that.
Yes, I can tell you in advance that I will have access to polls during the weekend before, because I have a very good connection with a person in one of the biggest polling companies in Athens, so I will have access to the probable ballot result, on time.
Well, it's important if you guys follow Steve via Twitter. If you don't, here's his, I'm putting it in the chat box. That's his Twitter handle. Steve, I want to thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me, Blake.
Yes,
and everybody for tuning in.
And I know there's things that you wanted to get off your chest, and I hope that your message is being heard, around the globe. I know it is with our community, but please keep up the good fight, and thank you so much for being with us here today, Steve. I
Thank you
appreciate
too,
it.
Blake. Have a nice day, everybody.
You too. All right, take care. All right, folks, Steve Bilby, I'm going to pass it over to you. I'm sorry to take up some of your time, and I'm sorry to the equity market traders. It's obviously, Greece does matter, and it matters to all of us what's happening here. It's not because of personal interest. It's because it matters in the financial markets. Obviously, when I clicked, as soon as I got up in the morning, I clicked on like my Yahoo page just to bring up a browser. And the first thing I see in the top stories are 3 of the 4 top stories are all Greek headlines. So,
usually, yeah. Lately.
No, it was today, this morning.
Yeah.
It was out of the 4 headlines. One of them was a shooting in like somewhere, and then the other 3 headlines had to do with Greece. It's important, and the world's watching. So this is it's important to hear from somebody who has obviously a very strong financial sense, and also somebody who is lives in Greece, who is in Athens, who's very well connected, who's very well educated, who also happens to have been at several of the rallies over the last couple of days, and has talked to many people to kind of get a sense of what's happening there. So anyway, thanks for your patience, everyone. Steve, I'm going to pass it over to you. And obviously, equity markets are feeling pretty good at the moment, right?
Right at the moment, they sure are.
Yeah, well, let's hope that continues. So, thank you, everyone. Steve, I'm going to pass it over to you. Thanks for your patience, and I'll see you guys in 3 hours on the Lunch Money webinar.
Sounds good. Thanks.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.